The way we segue into it from our parsha is with a medrash number 1. It's a medrash in Medrash Tehillim on Kapitel Ches, where it discusses the following. One?
What's the story of Medrash Tehillim?
It's one of the old medrashim.
He said Medrash Tehillim.
Yeah, it's one of the old medrashim.
Who wrote it?
Don't know who wrote it. The Kivan Sheyarad Moshe. It's really called Medrash Sheicher Tov. That's the name of it. That's its own.
Good beer.
Yeah. Good light. Good morning. There's also other parts to the Medrash besides for Tehillim. There's also on Mishlei and Shmuel. Anyhow, number 1, the Kivan Sheyarad Moshe, when Moshe descended from the mountain the first time. Va'asru Yisrael oisa ma'aseh, the Yidden committed the Aveir of the Eglei. V'nishtabru aluchos, the luchos were broken. Samchu malachei ashors, the angels were happy. Now you have to remember that the first time round, when Moshe went to get the luchos, the first time round, the malachim told the Eibishter, mo enesh kisis karena, why would you give the Torah down to planet Earth, to human beings? They're corrupt. And that story is recorded in Masechta Shabbos. And the Eibishter told Moshe, respond to them, answer them back. And Moshe told them, it says, did you guys go to Mitzrayim? It says, honor your parents, do you have parents, etc., etc. And Moshe won the first battle. However, in the aftermath of that, when the Eglei transpired, you could be sure the Malachim were very excited upstairs. And they said, Achshav tachzar Torah eleinu. They said, now, our point has been proven that humanity is corrupt and the Torah will return to its original abode in heaven. Moshe went up time number 2 to get the luchos. The malachim said to the Rebbeinu Shalom, they said, well, we're going to have this debate again. Last time you gave in to Moshe, and look what happened. Just recently the Yidden were over. You wrote lo of other gods, and they served the Eglei. Now it's interesting, here Moshe doesn't respond. You could imagine that this time Moshe was taka afraid, because look what happened. He tried to convince them the time before that they didn't deserve it, and boom. So this time the Eibishter kicks in. Amar lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem tells the Malachim, B'chol shah katigtin beini ubein Yisrael. You're forever creating accusations, like a kateger, between me and the Yidden. V'haloi atem, you angels, k'sheraratem eitzel Avram, when you went to Avram, in today's Chumash, achaltem, you ate basar b'cholav, you ate meat and milk. And no, this is not a repetition of last year's shir. Last year we discussed,
Why couldn't they answer that?
Shenemar, that says, vayikach chema v'cholav, he took butter, he took milk, uben abokar. Right, we discussed many answers, that they ate the milchiks first and then the fleishiks, or the Rebbe learns that Avram offered it a choice, just like the 3 tongues. They didn't have to eat the tongue. It was that they should be able to choose whatever they would like. And if you, that was another answer, Ben Abokar, Asher also good, yeah. V'tinik shalahem, so the Eibishter tells the Malachim like this, you guys came down, boom, you're here in planet Earth for a couple hours, eat milk. V'tinik shalahem, and a Jewish child, Kishubah mi Beis Rabba, when it comes on from Cheder, v'imayin from his, v'imayin asenes leipas basar ugvina, and the mother gives him supper, and the choice of flesh and cheese. He tells her, Mama, hayoyim limdani Rebbe, today my Rebbe taught me, lo savashal gedi b'chalavima, you can't have meat and milk. So Abel tells the Malachim, you want the Torah? You guys, you blundered big time. And every Jewish kid knows you can't have meat and milk. Loi motzu loi minus. So the Malachim were, their mouths were zipped. Ba'isa shos, Hashem tells Moshe, quick, this is a pasuk in Parshas Kisisa. Ksav lochos advar me'ela, write the Torah, ad she'ein lehem ma'in tshuva, before they think of an answer. While they're silent, because the pasuk in Kisisa right before that says, Lo yisavashal gedi b'chalavimai, and right, that's which is written 3 times in the Chumash, 1 in Kisisa, and the following pasuk is Hashem tells Moshe, Ksav lochos, write down es advar me'ela, right, which teaches you that the reason we got the Torah is because we do keep milk and meat, in contrast to the Malachim in today's Chumash. So that's actually why on Shavuos we dafka have a milchik's meal and a fleishik's meal. And we divide between the two with all the necessary halachas to demonstrate that in fact is the reason why we were zeicher to the Torah. The Malachim wanted it, but this was their one critique the Eibishter had of them was their lack of observance, so to speak, of this mitzvah. Now, did they mamish eat meat and milk? So there's a well-known debate in Chazal. The Gemara in Bab Metzia says that they made believe like they ate. In fact, the Alter Rebbe, famous story, he was once in the city of Shklov, and there was a major Misnagdish city, huge Goinim. You had many people walking around there, Bekim and Shas, tremendous scholars. And they knew the Alter Rebbe had the goods. They may not have agreed with him with his Chassidic lifestyle, but in Eglei they knew he had the goods, and they would honor him to deliver a shir in the big Beis Medrash, and the place was packed. And at that one of the encounters, one of them challenged the Alter Rebbe. They said, they say in your name that neshamas are pnimim and malachim are chitzonim. And they said, what type of Chassidic Baba Maisa folklore is that? What type of Chassidic Baba Maisa? And they said, don't quote us from any Sifri Kabbalah, no Zohar, no this, Bavli Yerushalmi. So Alter Rebbe said, it's a Befedish Gemara. He said, what are you talking about? It's a Gemara Baba Metzia, what are you talking about? So Alter Rebbe said, listen, the Gemara says that a person should never change from the minig of the place where he is. And the Gemara brings a raya from the Malachim and from Moshe. When Moshe went on Har Sinai, lechem lo yachal, mayim lo shasa, no food, no drink. Because in heaven there's no eating and drinking. When the Malachim came here, they also took on the custom, people eat and drink, so they made believe they ate and drank. That's what the Gemara says. So said the Alter Rebbe, when Moshe went to heaven, he taka didn't eat and drink. He be'emes took on the minig hamakom. The Malachim, when they came down, they just faked it. That shows that a malach is a chitzoni. It's not true through and through, not a pnimi. Tosfos on the Gemara and Bab Metzia quotes from a medrash Tana Dvei Eliyahu, and there's lots of history behind that medrash, if it comes from Eliyahu Hanavi or someone in the Gemara named Eliyahu. But in Tana Dvei Eliyahu it says clearly they mamish ate and drank. They mamish ate and drank. So according to Tana Dvei Eliyahu, they mamish ate and drank. So it would appear that this medrash is following that, because according to the Gemara, the Malachim could tell the Eibishter that the whole thing never happened. The whole thing was just a mirage. It was an illusion. According to the Tana Dvei Eliyahu, Taka took place. Okay, but here's the thing. When it comes to the Isra of meat and milk, it's written 3 times in the Torah. It's written in Parshas Mishpatim. It's written in Parshas Kisisa. It's written again in Parshas Re'eh. And each time it says the same thing. Lo yisavashal gedi, you can't cook a gedi, a kid, a young goat, b'chalev imay, with the milk of the mother. Now we know that this prohibition is not just a kid in the milk of its mother, it's any milk. And it's not just a kid, it's any kosher animal. So what are the criteria? The flesh has to come from a kosher animal, and the milk has to come from a kosher animal. So it all has to be kosher. In addition, it has to be an animal, a behema, not a chaya. So if it's deer, if it's from a deer, which is a chaya, would not be part of the prohibition.
Not from a petri dish. Also.
What? Oh yeah, so oif as well, right? Oif, yeah, b'chal, not an animal. So these things happen to be debates in Gemara. What?
I said not from. It says it has to be from an animal. So if it's from a lab, so
yeah, the shaila is if the original. Rav Moshe has a tshuva, if the original cell, the whole, whatever grows, has the same din as the original cell that it grew from.
In Israel, you came out with that lab-grown meat as part.
Oh, that's you're not. Yeah, that's something else.
It's from a DNA of a
meat. It's from a cell from a.
I don't know if it's from the cell, the DNA. Yeah, they had a whole thing on it.
Okay, Rav Moshe clearly writes here the tshuva. I mean, it's based on a story actually with it's a story in Nach. It's based on a Radak who discusses a story in Nach with Elisha, actually the Haftarah. When Elisha gave the bracha for the woman to have that unlimited amount of oil, or as much as she could fill in all of the kalim, the Radak brings a story that she came to Elisha and asked, am I chayiv in Meiser? So there's a big discussion there. So concerning that, the Moshe says that she was ultimately potter because the original oil she had zishain gemeiser. The original oil was she already meisered. So everything that grew from that was also potter. But had the original oil been chayiv and meiser, the whole thing would have been chayiv. The Moshe says whatever grows has the original din as the din of the original self.
Yeah. It's fleishiks, but it's kosher.
Say that. Good. Yeah. Okay.
You say the original investment as long as he gave Meister, you don't have to ever have What was that?
If it's supernatural.
Elaborate?
If it's supernatural.
Oh, everything is supernatural.
Yeah, so it is flesh. It's good. Okay.
You put in already tax money and it grows, so it gets tax free.
Exactly. Yeah. Fine. Anyhow, so it happens to be in Gemara Chulin. There's a long discussion. Some Tanoim hold the prohibition applies to chicken too. Some Tanoim hold it applies to chaya, to deer and giraffe, other. But in the Rambam, actually, there's a big contradiction. The Rambam in one place says it applies to chaya, it applies to non-domesticated animals, but in one place the Rambam says it's only by domesticated. So there's a well-known contradiction in the Rambam. Even by chicken, the Rambam writes in Hilchas Mamrim that anyone that says that if you cook chicken and milk, you violate the biblical command. The Rambam says you violate Baal Tosef, you're pushing adding to the Torah. But Tosfos holds chicken and milk is biblical. Tosfos and some other Rishonim hold that chicken has the same din as animal as far as meat and milk. But the halacha, the conventional halacha, is that no, fowl is excluded and undomesticated animals are excluded. It's only behema. Calves, cows, and goats, and lambs.
What? That chicken
How is it derived from the pasuk? When the pasuk says clearly.
So because it says gedi is a goat, is a.
Yeah, but
It's domesticated.
but it's specific.
Because it says 3 times. So the Gemara discusses the fact that the pasuk repeats itself 3 times. Each one's coming to exclude something else. It's a long Gemara. There's a couple blätter over there where you could indulge and see all the different limudim, and there's many opinions on the matter. Bottom line is, in straightforward halacha, it applies to any kosher behemoth, domesticated animal, with the milk of a domesticated animal as well. So why does the Torah say 3 times you can't cook? So let's look at what Rabbi Yosef Kai writes in the Shulchan Aruch in number 2. Kasav b'Torah, it says that this is the beginning of the laws of Basar b'Chalav. If anyone was interested in getting smicha, so we're going to get a bit of a head start today, about 0.001%. Doesn't matter. Kasav b'Torah, it says in the Torah, Loi savashel gedi, don't cook a goat b'chalavima in the milk of its mother. It says it 3 times, Gimel Pamim. Echad 1 time le'isr bishul, 1 to say you pasha can't cook. Ve'echad the other le'isr achila, you can't eat it. Ve'echad le'isr hana, 1 is for the isr of benefit. Now how much are we talking about? How much meat and milk are we talking about? So the Gemara in Chulin brings a great debate between Rav and Levi. Rav holds you actually have to have a kazayas of flesh and another kazayas of cholav. Each one has to be a separate kazayas in order to be over this whole thing. According to Levi, the halacha follows him. It doesn't. As long as there's a kazayas all together, it's also to cook, also to eat, also to have benefit. So that's why it's 3 times. Each pasuk's telling me something different. So then the obvious shaila is, so why doesn't the pasuk say it clearly? So says the Rabbi Yosef Kaida, and this is based on the Gemara. V'hoitzi achila b'loshen bishul. Why does the Torah say you can't eat in the language of cooking? Loimer, to tell you, she'einoi asur min ha-Torah ela derech bishul. It's only asur min ha-Torah to eat or to have benefit if it was cooked. And he writes derech bishul, derech being a key word. He doesn't just say ela bishul, but derech bishul, through the way of cooking. But that's the idea. The Torah says don't cook 3 times. 2 of them don't refer to cooking, refers to eating and having hana, but it's only if the product had been cooked. If it wasn't cooked, min ha-Torah, you could eat it, you could have benefits. Aval, however, midrabanan asur b'chol inyan. Midrabanan, it's asur in all circumstances. Meaning, even if it wasn't cooked together, midrabanan, you can't what? You can't eat. What about benefit? He doesn't say. The Mechaber, at least in this point, he doesn't say. So comes the Ramah, and the Ramah writes a very important rule. Kol basar b'cholav she'enei asur min ha'Torah. Any basar b'cholav which min ha'Torah doesn't count. Let's say it's chicken and milk, or it's a chaya and milk, or it was real basar and cholav but it wasn't cooked. As long as the mixture is not a biblical prohibition, mutter ba'na, you could have benefit. Meaning the Chachamim only had an issue with eating. That was it. That was it. Now this happens to be a big debate. The Maharshal, who was alive in the same time as the Ramah, they even learned in the same yeshiva. I mean, the Ramah is younger, but the Reb Shalom Shachan of Lublin, the great Gaon Shalom Shachan of Lublin, the Marshal learned by him, and the Ramah ended up marrying his daughter. The Maharal also learned there. The Friedrich Rebbe describes how they all learned there. The Maharal of Prague was a similar age as the Maharshal. The Ramah, the exact birth of the Ramah has been a shailuf, and we know that when the Ramah passed away, exactly how old he was has been a big issue for many years, all types of theories, but l'chera, he was younger than the Maharal and the Maharshal. But they all learned there anyhow, and the Ramah was zeicha to marry the Rosh Yeshiva's daughter. It happened to be a world-class yeshiva where they were focusing on pilpul, heavy pilpul. And later on in life, the Maharal in Lublin, the Maharal later on in life had tremendous regret, and he writes about this in almost every sefer that he wrote, about his regret of wasting time in these pulim and these intellectual gymnastics, we'll call them. It's not real learning, it's not real information, it's just fun, and it's a major distraction. He calls it darkness instead of light. No, he writes much worse than that. But in one place he says that in my older years I'm doing tshuva. He says, you know how I'm making up for all my lost years as a bocher? The fact that I'm coming out now and I'm publicizing, I'm trying to set the record straight for today's students. Hopefully the Eibishter will atone through this act of repentance my sins of my youth.
You did a long time to make up.
In one place he writes, he says, you see a bocher with a great head, and the bocher thinks he knows the whole Torah because he's been learning for 10 years straight, day and night. And the Maharal says, you ask him a question, what's the din in this case? And the bocher opens his mouth because he thinks he knows, and nothing comes out because he's busy with pulpulim and svaras and questions and answers, but he knows nothing. And the Maharal says, how could you not rend your garments like seeing a Sefer Torah that was burnt? He says, this bocher could have been a Sefer Torah. He has a head on his shoulders. He could have known everything. And because of the way he was taught, he knows nothing. It's like a Sefer Torah that was burnt. How could you not tear your clothes? Yeah, anyhow, all right, enough of that. But upon him, that was the yeshiva. Shalom Shachan of Lublin was, no doubt, incredible Gaon. And much was gained from the path of pilpul that was taken. It happens to be that, most, the Shalah, the Klayakar, many people were, wrote against it. Very few people actually wrote for it. Anyhow, so upon him, the Maharshal disagrees with this statement of the Ramah. The Maharshal holds, no. Whenever Chachamim prohibited eating, they prohibited benefit as well. The two things come together. Just like min ha'Torah, if it's cooked, you can't eat or have benefit. So too, when the items weren't cooked, so min ha'Torah it's okay, or there's a problem with the milk, it's not, or the chicken, whenever the Chachamim treat it as basar b'cholav, so then the Isser of eating and the Isser of hana come together. What? Exactly, kain deraisa. Yeah, right. But bishul might be different. Lav davka, they were gozer on the cooking. But hana always comes with eating. And the Mashal's not the only one. The Bach wants to say in the Rambam would also hold this. So you have a few people that believe that whatever is osir in eating is osir for benefit. There were those that believed that whenever the Maharshal argues on the Ramah, you paskin like the Maharshal. The Maharshal was a whopping posek. And there were those that believe, as great as the Ramah was, if the Maharshal's machmer, you take the Maharshal. However, in this debate, the poskim are all unanimous that we don't follow the Maharshal in this. We follow the Ramah, and if the basar b'chol is only rabbinic, then you're allowed to have benefits. Okay? So that's the psak that we take. So here's the thing. What exactly is bishul? What exactly does it mean to cook something? It has to be clearly defined. What does bishul mean? Or derech bishul. Because it's a huge difference. If it's bishul, then the actual act of cooking will be osur min ha'Torah. You get malchus for bishul. If someone cooks basar b'cholav, they're over deraisa, they get malchus. and then eating it afterwards would also be a biblical prohibition. You get malchus, and it's also asur min Torah to have benefits. To have benefit.
At the same time also.
No. The truth is, Hana itself, the Rambam holds you don't get malchus for being over Hana. Why? Okay, so there's a well-known statement of the Maggid Mishnah. The Maggid Mishnah says that anything which is able to be eaten, then its normal way of benefit is to eat it. And therefore, if you have an item which is also to have benefit, but it's edible, so the Maggid Mishnah says if you don't eat it and you have Hana a different way, it's as if you're having Hana in a strange fashion. Because it is edible, you should have eaten it. Why didn't you eat it? Why did you do something else with it? It's Hana shaloi kederech. That's the famous statement of the Maggid Mishnah. The major issue with that is that basar b'cholav is unique from almost all other isurim, that you can't have benefit even as in a strange fashion. Let me just explain that on the side. When the Torah says you can't eat, it means you can't eat in a regular fashion. If you're going to stick it in through the veins, you're not over min Torah. So too, when the Torah forbids something for benefit, it means in a regular fashion. Basar b'cholav happens to be a unique thing, that it's also to have benefit even shaloi kederech hanasa, even in a strange way. So everybody asks on this Maggid Mishnah. Again, the Maggid Mishnah says, and this is mamash, just a parenthesis on the side, so I'll stop in 30 seconds. But the Maggid Mishnah again says in Das HaRambam that an item which is also for benefit, but if it's edible, then its regular way of Hana would be eating it. Like why? So if you don't eat it and you do something else with it, that's considered a strange way of Hana, because why didn't you eat it? So therefore, for all other Isurim, that Svara works. You're not going to get Malchus on having benefit, because if you could have eaten it and you didn't, you did something else, it's considered Hana in a strange way. It happens to be by basar b'cholav, though, is unique, that it's biblically prohibited any benefit, even in a strange way. So, and yet the Rambam seems to hold you never get Malchus even on Hana of basar b'cholav. And the Achronim all discuss why that is. Some Rishonim hold you do get Malchus for Hana. Anyhow, but Akopane, when it comes to working out what bishul is, it's of high importance. If this is considered bishul, if you do it, you get Malchus. Then the resulting food is going to be biblically prohibited to eat. And it's also asur min Torah to have benefit. But if the act that you're doing is not cooking, if the certain act you're doing is not cooking, then everything changes. First of all, you're allowed to do the act. It's interesting, something which is similar to cooking but not cooking itself, it seems like the Chachamim did not prohibit it. If it's not considered cooking, you're allowed to do it. Salting milk and meat, it's almost by none of the poskim do they say it's an issue. We don't say, well, if you salt it, maybe you'll cook it. We don't. If it's not cooking, you're allowed to make, now it might be bal tashchis, whatever, but you're allowed to do the act. Not only that, the resulting food is only usher to eat rabbinically. And more important is, according to the Ramah, you can have benefits.
You can have a restaurant.
So doing business with food which is usher to eat is in general a rabbinic prohibition. But you could have a one-time Hana. Like if someone happens to in their kitchen have a milk and meat concoction that's not halachically cooked, you don't have to chuck it, you can give it to your cleaning lady, according to the Ramah. Yeah, so right. Doing business consistently with something which is usher to eat, the Chachamim prohibited. Some hold it's even biblically prohibited, but if it's a one-off type of thing, then that's a regular halach of Hana. And we follow the Ramah that if it's not considered mamish bishul, so it's not biblical, you can have benefit. So there are major discussions in what exactly is considered bishul. I'm going to throw a couple of them out. Roasting. What does it mean to roast? What does roasting mean? Roasting is if you have fire and you have something cooking without liquid. Even if you have a frying pan, but there's no oil in it, you have a piece of flesh in a milchik frying pan, which is clean, that's considered sli. That's considered roasting. Even if you have a piece of cheese and a piece of meat together, and you roast them on a rotisserie together, even though the cheese is liquidy, that's considered roasting. It's considered roasting. It's tzli. And the question is tzli, is roasting considered cooking? It's a major debate. It's a major debate. Now, did I even get it on the paper? I did not get it on the paper. But by Korban Pesach, there's a raya. It says Bashalta in Parshas Rei. It says you should cook the Korban Pesach. Now in Parshas Boy, it says it's awesome in Torah to eat Korban Pesach that was cooked. So the pasuk in Rei, when it says bishul, it really means tzli. And roasting can be nicknamed cooking. So if biblically roasting could be nicknamed cooking, so when it says lo yisavashal gedi, it could include roasting as well. The pre-Chodosh is very machmir by roasting. But the Pri Megadim, who was the pre-Chodosh, was one of the greatest Fardish poskim in the late 1600s. The Pri Megadim is Ashkenazi in the times of the Alter Rebbe, a little bit older than the Alter Rebbe. There's actually a tradition that the Pri Megadim's mother married the Maggid of Mizrich later on in life. They didn't have any children, but the Maggid of Mizrich later married the Pri Megadim's mother. And the Pri Megadim brings it, there's a debate. He actually wants to be machmir like the Pri Chodosh, but it's a debate. It's a debate if roasting is considered cooking. And it's interesting because if you look in Hilchas Shabbos, cooking on Shabbos is one of the 39 malachas, and there's no debate. There, if you roast an item on Shabbos, you're most definitely chayav for cooking. So one of our shilas is going to be, we want to compare and contrast cooking on Shabbos to cooking on Basar B'Cholov. By Basar B'Cholov, it's a machlokes, a big debate if roasting is considered cooking. Yet on Shabbos, there's no debate. Why would that be? It's all bishul. Bishul you can't do on Shabbos. Bishul you can't do Basar B'Cholov. Why would the translation of bishul be different? Why would many people hold by Basar B'Cholov, tzli is not considered cooking? On Shabbos it is. So that's one thing. Frying. What's the difference of frying and roasting? Frying is a bit of oil. So if you have butter, and the butter is melted, and you put in a steak, and you fry the steak, but it's called frying. It's not bishul, it's tigun, it's frying. Is frying considered cooking? So again, the pre-Chodosh holds, yes, frying, roasting, it's all cooking. Here, the Maram Shif gets involved. He was one of the big scholars in the early 1600s in Germany. He died young. Unfortunately, like the Pri Chodosh passed away about 39 years old. He was at the end of the 1600s in Eretz Yisrael. The Maram Shif is in Germany in the early 1600s. He passes away about 36 years old, even younger. Maram Shif was also a big Kabbalist and everything. Maram Shif has a letter where he writes that he believes frying is b'chlal not cooking. It's not cooking. Cooking needs a certain amount of liquid. If it's only a small amount and it's oil, or butter, it's frying. Now, what about deep frying? I don't know. It could be shallow frying, but the Maram Shif is certain that shallow frying is not cooking. What's interesting here is the Pri Megadim here is more makel. The Pri Megadim feels that frying is more different than cooking than roasting. So, the Pri Megadim wants to go like the Pri Chodosh by roasting. Roasting and cooking are the same. Frying is already different. And you wonder, wait a second, if the definition of cooking is liquid, then frying definitely should be more similar than roasting. But Pri Megadim says no.
Does he give a reason?
No, he doesn't. The Pri Megadim was a poor man, and when he wrote his Sforim, he had no paper, no ink. He was extremely cryptic. To the point that later on, the Avnei Nezer, the great Avnei Nezer, we're actually going to see something from him later, he was asked why he doesn't koch sich so much in the Pri Megadim. And the Avnei Nezer says, because in the amount of time it takes to decipher one paragraph of the Pri Megadim, I can learn so much from something else, because it's written so cryptically. The Pri Megadim, in the end of his own life, had a hard time reading his own works.
Right.
And the Tzemach Tzedek
Happens to me every day.
Living the dream.
Listen, the Tzemach Tzedek in his older years, the Tzemach Tzedek had an issue with his eye, a cataracts or something. He couldn't see, and the Tzemach Tzedek was trying to learn from his own Sfarim, and he couldn't read it. And the Tzemach Tzedek started crying, and he said, "What happened to the Pri Megadim is happening to me." And he shed bitter tears until whatever was in his eye was released, and he was healed. That's the story. So the Pri Megadim is very cryptic, doesn't give a reason. But I don't know, it's interesting. I've seen some people ask, Usher Weiss wants to discuss why the Pri Megadim would hold that way. I don't know.
By minchas that when you have to fry it, like when you make those things, you're not let it cook it, you have to fry it.
Correct. Yeah. But the chayra frying is closer to bishul than roasting. Yeah, at least you have a shallow. Apparently nished. Anyhow, but again on Shabbos, frying for sure you're chayav for cooking on Shabbos. Basa b'chalav, the Maram Shif, the Pri Megadim, many people want to be mekel. The Pri Megadim, so the Pri Megadim says by frying it depends if it's a hefsed meruba. How much stuff are you throwing out? You see, if it's an accidental piece of steak that was fried in the butter, so the Pri Megadim would say, listen, maybe it is considered bishul, and therefore you can't have benefits of chukat. But the Pri Megadim says if it's a sizable amount, the Pri Megadim says, you could be soymich, rely on the Maram Shif and whatever, and give it to a guy, because we'll consider it not cooked, only rabbinic basa b'chalav, and we'll apply the psak of the Ramah, you can have benefit.
That makes sense. That's why they're trying to find a loophole to say.
Yeah, but by roasting, he doesn't hold that. By roasting is machmir.
Right.
So it's interesting why that would be. But what's interests us today is why b'chlal is it a discussion by basa b'chalav, and most people are mekel, and that you have on Shabbos it seems to be a no-brainer.
But why is that a question when they're trying to find a way to save
No.
Jewish money?
No, why would anyone say that frying is not considered cooking by Basar B'chalav? Yeah, how is there an opinion to rely on? Go to the source, go to that opinion. How could there be an opinion there, B'chlal?
That's the question.
That's the question. That's our question. Yeah, that's our question. On the opinion itself is lenient. Some more examples. On Shabbos, cooking, you're chayiv if you cook in the fire itself, or let's say the fire heats up a metal plate, right? And then the fire goes off. But if the metal plate is hot enough, and you put an item and the item cooks, you're chayiv. It's called tul de sa'ur. If it was heated up by fire, it's just like fire. Then you have something which is heated up by the sun. The sun. You have a car, right? The car, the top can become extremely, extremely hot. You can put an egg on it and the egg will fry, right? Exactly. So it's called tul descham. It's been heated up by the sun. So here's the deal. If something is cooked by the sun itself, so let's say on top of the car you put something which divides between the top of the car and the item being cooked, in order that the egg is only being cooked by the sun, is completely mutter. The Chacham didn't even have any issues with that. If you're going to use something that was heated up by the sun, tul descham it's called, then Chacham said, that's a problem. We don't want that because someone may exchange that with tul desa'ur. If something was heated up by the sun, and you use that hot surface, so the next Shabbos you might use a surface that was heated up by fire, because you'll say, well, last week I used a hot surface, this week I'll use a hot surface. So a hot surface which is heated by fire is biblically a problem on Shabbos. If it's a hot surface heated up by the sun, it's only D'Rabbanan you may exchange. But if it's the sun itself, is purely fine. It's mutter. And yet, it seems that by Basar B'cholav, it seems they want to be medayik from a Rambam, that by Basar B'cholav, the Rambam is not sure if the sun happens to be hot enough, and the milk and the meat are able to cook in the sun, that the Rambam would hold it's a suffix, if it's considered cooking milk and meat or not. And if it's a suffix, then you'd have to be machmir. It could be it's biblical. First of all, the action itself, you can't put it in the sun. It's 50-50, you're violating cooking. And then you wouldn't be able to have benefit. It's 50-50 a biblical prohibition on the benefit. You see, chamei Tveria, if you cook in the hot waters of Tveria, is considered like at least tul deschama. And when it comes to Shabbos, it's minat Torah, it's completely fine to cook something in the chamei Tveria, the hot waters of Tveria. But by Basar B'cholav, the Rambam seems to clearly hold it's a suffix, which means the Rambam is more machmir by Basar B'cholav when it comes to cooking things with heat from the sun. And the shas, why would that be? Why would that be? by the case of the roasting and the frying, fakert, you want to say Shabbos is more chomerdik. There's no debate by Shabbos. And when it comes to the hot springs of Tveria or cooking something in the sun, the Rambam seems to be much more cautious by Bosa B'chol. He's not sure there's a 50-50. Where by Shabbos, definitely in Torah it's fine. In the sun, for sure. If it's heated by the sun, Chacham will worry you'll mix it with something else. But in Torah, there's no problem. Bosa B'chol, Mitam Moses Safek. Why? Why aren't the bishul the same? So that's another shot. And we move further. Ein bishul achar bishul. Cooking after cooking. When it comes to the laws of Shabbos, if you have an item which was already cooked once, it can't be recooked. If it's a dry item and it was cooked once, it can't be recooked. Meaning that it's unable to be recooked. So therefore, there's no problem to have it heated up on Shabbos.
Because you're ruining it.
And there's no bishul achar, you're not accomplishing anything. There's no bishul achar bishul. No, now there's not. Taking something, there's mechsa, yeah. If you take an item that was stam cooked, a few days ago, and then on Shabbos you're going to put it mamash on the fire, the Chum said don't do it, because it looks like you're cooking. But Minat Torah it's fine, and even D'Rabban, as long as you can get away from that, you put it on top. Well, there's other. As long as you get away out of the issue that it looks like cooking, it's fine. If it's a liquid item, then you go into a new issue. If it was liquid and it was cooked, and now it's cooled down, it could be you can recook it fine. But when it comes to Basa B'cholav, there's a major debate. Rabbi Kiva Eger and his son Reb Shloime Eger, in the beginning of Basa B'cholav, they already bring up that by Basa B'cholav it's garnish pashut. By Basa B'cholav, recooking milk and meat could be much more of an issue than by Shabbos. And generally it divides into three opinions. Generally, recooking Basa B'cholav divides in three opinions.
What do you mean by dry? The milk is dry?
No, they're dry by Shabbos. By Shabbos, dry by Shabbos. Oh, well, how about listen to the three opinions.
Powdered milk.
Right. Listen to the three opinions. There's
Powdered water.
the Shavus Yankiv is the Shavus Rabbi Yaakov Reisha, the great gone 300 years ago, who was, and in his time he was definitely one of the poskim of his generation, and the Shavus Yankiv tainas that by Basa B'cholav, if you cook it again, you're going to be chayav for cooking. We don't say the heter that once it was cooked, it's already. We don't say that by Basa B'cholav, he says. We don't say that. If every time you cook it, it's a new Isser D'Oraisa. That's what he says every time. On the other side, you have Rabbeinu Gershom in his commentary to Masechta Chulin. So here, he's 700 years before Rabbi Yaakov Reisha. Rabbeinu Gershom says just the opposite. Basa B'cholav, once it's cooked, there's no such thing as cooking it again. Can't be cooked again. And then you have a middle opinion, which is the opinion of the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer holds it depends. If the basa was cooked by itself, and the milchik was cooked by itself, but now you're cooking them together, you'll violate cooking basa b'chol, because now the flavors are going to be imparted one to the other. So now you'll be cooking. But if the mixture was once cooked before, the basa b'chol themselves were already cooked together once before, and now you're recooking them, it won't. What?
The flavors already mixed.
Exactly, nothing's happening. So you have three opinions. You have the Shavus Yankov who seems to say no matter what, even if they were cooked together before, it doesn't matter. Cooking them again, you'll get malchus again. The issue's re-happening. Rabbeinu Gershom seems to say even if they were cooked separately, once cooked, it's cooked. So if you put them together, they're already cooked. And the Chassam Sofer is going down the middle. And it's not just the Chassam Sofer. Many people go because it makes a lot of sense. They take a middle path that if they were cooked separately before and now they're together, so now the flavors are imparting one to the other, you violate the prohibition. If they're already cooked once before, then you won't violate again. And the shaila is, at least let's say according to the Shavus Yankov who holds that even if they were cooked together once before, you'll violate it again. Why does he hold it's different than Shabbos? Shabbos you definitely would not say that yesh bishul achar bishul. There isn't. And by Basa B'chol, the Shavus Yankov and many others, one taina there is. So again, you see, it's another difference between Shabbos versus Basa B'cholav. And I'll throw in another one, just while I have you here. There's a well-known comment of the Ramban, and if it's not well-known yet, we're going to make it well-known. it's a comment of the Ramban, and it's also said by his student the Rashba. It's usually known as from the Rashba, but it actually comes from his Rebbe the Ramban, and it's a well-known idea. It's a simple idea. The Ramban says, and the Rashba say, that when you have a kli sheni, a kli sheni is you have an item which is on the fire, you have a hot thing of water on the fire, you take it off, and you pour it into another vessel. So the second vessel is a kli sheni. A kli sheni doesn't cook. A kli sheni doesn't cook. But the Ramban and the Rashba say it can still cause flavors to impart from one item to another. In other words, if you have a piece of flesh and blood, a tray for blood falls in, let's say the tray for blood is a kli sheni. It's hot, right? The blood was on the fire, kli rishon, put into a kli sheni, and a kosher piece of meat falls in. You can't pull out that piece of meat and wash it off and eat it. It's a kli sheni, it wasn't cooked, it can't be cooked. It doesn't matter. Taka can't cook, but there's blia and plata. The absorption of flavors happens. And how are you going to extract all the flavor from the meat? Squeezing it out, washing it under the sink isn't going to work. That's what the Ramban says. So what's the Ramban's proof? How does he know that absorption, blia and plata, has different rules than cooking?
But if it was a cold piece of meat in cold blood, then you can wash it off?
If it sat in there just for a second, then in theory, yeah. What? Yeah. That what?
You have a kiss of meat out. You say, pull it right away. Then
Right, even if it's hot there, right. So the Ramban says, what's his proof? Salting. The Ramban says if you salt something on Shabbos, you're not chayav for cooking. The Ramban said you take fish on Shabbos, you salt it. There could be other issues of a ma'abed, it's called, but cooking, you're not chayav for salting. Yet the Ramban says everyone knows that if you're going to have blood and meat or an Easter and a heter salting together, the salt causes the flavor to transfer. Right? Meliach kureseach. Salt is like boiling. Salt is like bubbling. So Ramban says just like by salt, it's not considered cooking on Shabbos, yet it causes the transfer of flavor. So too kli sheni. It doesn't cook, but it causes the transfer of flavor. The Ran, who was 2 generations after, or 3 generations after the Ramban, in his commentary to Avodah Zarah, quotes the Ramban. He says, I don't know what the Ramban's talking about. Who said you're not chayav for salting fish on Shabbos for cooking? The Ran says if you salt fish on Shabbos, you're chayav for cooking. Sure. It's a clear Ran. The Ran.
Why wouldn't you?
The Ran wants to. The Ran wants to taina. Why? The Pashas, we don't hold like this Ran. Fakir. We hold salting. Not mitzad bishul. It's not bishul deraisa.
Right, not deraisa, but
It could be other things. But the Ran tainas that if you salt something on Shabbos, you are chayav for cooking. So you asked on the Ramban's whole raya was from salting. It's not cooking, but it causes the transfer of flavor. So too kli sheni does the same thing. In fact, the Ran, I didn't see the raya. I think that salt does cause cooking. Now here's the pella. What does the Ran hold by milk and meat? If you salt milk and meat, you're over the derais of cooking? No. So how do you explain the Ran? The Ran holds by Shabbos, salting is cooking, not basar b'chala. So weiter, we have this inconsistency. I'm going to give you one more example, and this is from number 3, the Pischei Tshuva. There was a well-known issue raised by here, look at number 3. 2 words in. Ayin b'tshuvas Sha'ar Ephraim. Rabbi Ephraim HaKoyen. He wrote the Sha'ar Ephraim in the 1600s. Don't mix it up with the Sha'arei Ephraim from our Margolis friend in Brod. He has the Sha'arei Ephraim, the gates of Ephraim. But this is the Sha'ar Ephraim who was a Kohen. Fakir, this guy's a Kohen, and anyhow. He married it connects to our shir on Thursday night. He married the granddaughter of Eliyahu Baal Shem, who made the Goylem, and he was the Zayd of the Chacham Tzvi, and that's why the Chacham Tzvi and Yankiv Emden speak about their El to Zayd, the Eliyahu Baal Shem's Goylem. It was through this guy, the Sha'ar Ephraim. Anyhow, Shepasach, he paskened like this. Bechema, there was barish and his bashlo b'kdei shel boser. You have butter that was cooked in a fleishik pot, ben yoimai. The fleishik pot was used within 24 hours. If you cook milk in a fleishik pot that was used within 24 hours, You have just cooked milk and meat because the flavor will be expunged from the walls of the kli. It'll mix with the milk. You have just created basar b'chol, so it's actually awesome in our Torah to do that. But then he says further, what happened with the butter? You turned it into wax and you made candles. He says, asur lahadlik bo lahar habayis. You can't use this butter to light the house because it's forbidden for benefit. The butter itself is basar b'chol from when it was made. And especially if you use it as a candle, you're cooking it again, and you're going to be having benefit from basar b'chol. Mitam, he says, sha'asur b'hanos, asur for benefit. V'gam lahadlik bo ner Chanukah. So the question came, what about using such candles for ner Chanukah? Why? Because we have a rule that mitzvahs lav lehonas nitnu. Mitzvahs are not considered a geschmack. Meaning, if I take a vow, I'm not going to have benefit from this and this person for the next 12 months. He could blow shofar for me because he's letting me fulfill my mitzvah. That's not considered benefit. Mitzvahs are not benefit. So l'chayra, you would think that using these candles for ner Chanukah would be okay. It's not considered benefit.
Yeah,
now,
Hanukkah, not Shabbos.
Yeah, exactly. Shabbos, you need benefit. Chanukah it's a lalo kodesh. They're holy. You can't have benefits. And the fact that you're doing the mitzvah is not considered a benefit. I will say, though, there's a well-known Baal Hamor. The Baal Hamor holds that mitzvahs d'Rabbanon were given for benefit. The Baal Hamor holds if it's a rabbinic mitzvah, fulfilling it is considered a benefit. The Minchas Chinuch quotes it often in his sefer. The Ran disagrees, so there's a big debate. The Ran holds mitzvahs d'Rabbanon are equal to d'oraisa. We apply the same rule. Fulfilling them is not considered a benefit. According to the Baal Hamor, mitzvah d'Rabbanon is. So by the shofar case, only on the first day of Rosh Hashanah could you hear shofar from someone you took a vow not to have benefit. According to the Baal Hamor, second day you can't. Because it's only d'Rabbanon, and that's considered a benefit. Interesting. Anyhow, so ner Chanukah, according to the Baal Hamor, would be a problem because fulfilling the mitzvah is a benefit. Now, it happens to be that most hold like the Ran, that even by mitzvah d'Rabbanon is not considered benefit. So that would be a reason to use it. So he says, even though mitzvahs are not lav lahonas nitnu, they're not given for benefit, and the Sha'ar Ephraim obviously holds like the Ran, will apply that by a rabbinic mitzvah as well. So you should be able to light the candles of Chanukah. It's not considered a benefit. Mikol makom osur. He said it's osur for a different reason. Kivan the b'ner Chanukah boy yishir. Ner Chanukah needs an amount. Ubebasa b'cholav kivan sha'osur ba'ana ksusi michtus shiura. The idea is like this: anything which is forbidden for benefit has to be destroyed, right? Because having it around is a stumbling block. The Gemara has a rule: anything which is going to be destroyed is like it's already destroyed. Which means the item that you have, it's like it's not here anymore. It has no amount. Ner Chanukah, you need a certain amount of oil in the cup to last for a half hour, 50 minutes, whenever you're lighting it, a half hour after nightfall. But since this oil is prohibited for benefit, it needs to be destroyed. Kituti machta shiura means it has no amount. It doesn't have, it's like there's nothing there. It's like there's no oil in the cup.
I can't light ner Chanukah and keep adding a little bit of oil at a time.
No. Adlaka isa mitzvah has to be. Now there happens to be. I'll tell you, all the Rosh Yeshivas attack this Sha'ar Ephraim and say, wait a second, you don't need to have a certain amount of oil in your cup. It's a technicality. By a shofar, the shofar needs to be a certain size. So if the shofar came from an animal that was worshipped, you could apply this logic. Since the shofar has to be crushed, it's like you don't have the full amount of the shofar. By ner Chanukah, you don't have to have a certain amount of milliliters of oil inside that cup. It needs to be able to light for a half hour. So if it can be able to light for a half hour, and which in this case it is, you don't have to be able to measure a certain amount of oil. So many Rosh Yeshivas have a problem why the Sha'ar Ephraim uses this logic over here. But upon him, this is the tshuva of the Sha'ar Ephraim. This has been a major discussion ever since this came out, because there are so many reasons to attack this case, to study this case. There's literally, you could write a whole book just studying this case, because there's so many angles to attack it from. One of them is, wait a second. You're busy discussing if you're allowed to light it for ner Chanukah because you're having benefit. How could you light it for ner Chanukah? You're going to be cooking the milk and the meat. There's milk and meat in there. There's milk and meat, but there's milk and meat in there, right? This candle has flesh or as fat and butter.
Cooking,
exactly. So the Eglei Rabba, who was a generation after the Shar Ephraim, he asked, I didn't get this whole discussion. You want to know if you're allowed to light the Ner Chanukah, how you're getting the mitzvah benefit. What benefit? How could you set that match to that candle? You're going to be cooking milk and meat. So there were those at that time. The Eglei Rabba lives in the end of the 1600s. So there were those. Some other Rabbanim wrote back and said, no, it's not a shaila. Because ein bishul, if you hold ein bishul achar bishul, was already cooked. How did you make this? How was this wax thing made? The story was you cooked. You had the butter in the pan, so it was already cooked once before. So if you hold ein bishul achar bishul, if you hold that, so when you're going to light it now, you're not going to be over. So that's where the Shavus Yankov, who's the brother-in-law of the Eglei Rabba, he writes back to these Rabbanim that that this is where the Shavus Yankov says, no, there's major Bishul Achar Bishul by Basar, much more than by Shabbos. It was written to defend his brother-in-law's question on the Shar Ephraim.
See how that leads to a stretch.
Because the Shavus Yankov also had an issue with the Kohanim. The Shavus Yankov. Anyhow, so hold on. So
Or makes you see the light.
So the Chasam, so there's many things to take into consideration. Because the truth is, no. How did they make the wax? They had butter in a pot, which had flesh in the walls of the pot, but there was no liquid, just butter, so it's frying. So the first time the candle was made through tigun. If tigun is not considered bishul, then here it's going to come back to haunt you. Because then when you actually light it by the Hanukkah candles, that's going to be the first bishul. Unless you say tigun is not bishul, but the fact is it does something to the food that you can no longer cook it. Like there's another option. It could be when you fry it, you're not over the rice of cooking. But since it's no longer raw, maybe when you cook it later, you'll still apply ein bishul achar bishul. The point is, it's become a major discussion forever, and the Chassam Sofer got involved in it too in number 5. Jump to number 5. The Chassam Sofer has a long letter about these candles. And the Chassam Sofer deals with another issue. Wait a second. On Shabbos, if somebody has a candle, if someone has an oil candle on Shabbos and they light it, what are you chayav for on Shabbos? You're chayav for mavir, which is burning. Are you chayav for cooking? No. On Shabbos, if you are burning a liquid, you're only chayav for burning. You're not chayav for cooking. So Chassam Sofer says, so what's this whole shail of the Eglei Rabba, the cooking by the candle of Basar B'Cholav? On Shabbos, you wouldn't be chayav for cooking.
If it was edible, why wouldn't you?
You're not. That's the place can say you're only chayav for burning. So why? So this is yet another discrepancy. Why by Basar B'Cholav?
Right.
Why by Basar B'Cholav there seems to be an issue of cooking when you heat up the butter or the oil, and yet by Shabbos it's only chayav for mavir. So the Chassam Sofer says he says the yesod for the whole thing. He says you have to know the difference between basar b'cholav and cooking on Shabbos. This is the key to the whole thing. We'll finish mamash in 3 minutes. He says the difference is like this. On Shabbos, the isur is the malacha of bishul, the accomplishment of bishul. Basar b'cholav is the action of bishul. It's the action itself. And he says like this, number 5, Mikol Mokim, Inyan Bishul b'Shabbos, when you cook on Shabbos, Tzorich lahadover hamizbashel. You need the item that was cooked to be here, to remain. You have to get some benefit. There has to be a result. It has to be extant. If it disappears, if you are lighting a candle on Shabbos, an oil candle, right? The oil that's being cooked is absorbed in the wick and turns into fuel and disappears. You don't get any. Whatever gets cooked disappears. You don't. Whatever remains is the stuff that wasn't cooked yet. So va'achar bishul lo nisha biyad, nothing's there. So afal pi mikol makom bishul, you did cook that oil, but since it's not here anymore, there's no accomplishment. So Shabbos taka is the only issue of burning, not cooking. But ule inyan basar b'cholav also toyeva. By basar b'cholav, don't cook. It's the action. I don't care what happens to the milk. I don't care if it disappears. So he says that by the Chanukah lich, when you're dealing with a candle which is made up of butter and flesh, I don't care that what's being cooked, you'll never see it again. It's the act of bishul which is prohibited. But by Shabbos it's different, because Shabbos it has to be similar to what they did in the Mishkan, where they cooked spices to get their color. There has to be something, a result, an accomplishment that's tangible. And the Eglei Tal in number 4 says a similar thing about cooking on Shabbos. The Eglei Tal is the Avnei Nezer. Same guy, Avremelev Sochatshov. He was a great Chassidic Gaon. He passed away in 1910. But even the times of the Rebbe Rashab, Teitelbaum's father may have known him. He would have been a young kid, but who knows? The Avnei Nezer, he was an incredible. He was a big fan. He was big in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. And Bechlal, the Rebbe was big in his Torah. I mean, he was absolutely fascinating. So he wrote a sefer on the Malachas of Shabbos called Eglei Tal. Sure, he was a Rebbe. He was the son-in-law of the Kotzke, and then he became, years later, he became a Chassidic Rebbe on his own right. And in number 4, he says like this. He's talking about if you cook on Shabbos in the sun, right? We said that that's fine. You're allowed to cook something in the sun on Shabbos. If it's on the top of the car which was heated by the sun, so then Chacham word you might mix that up with the stove top that was heated by fire. But in theory, the sun is perfectly fine. Rashi explains, you know why? Rashi says because cooking through the sun is a strange act. So the Eglei Tal says then at least it should be Asur Midrabanan, right? If you're doing a malacha of Shabbos which is done in a strange path, true, granted, Minat Torah you don't violate, but Midrabanan you do. So why by the sun would all bets be off and it's fine? So says the Eglei Tal, you got to notice there's 2 things. One thing is when the act is strange. The other is when the result is strange. He says something cooked in the sun is a whole different gekochte meise. It's a different type of egg than if you'd cook it on something that was heated up by fire. It's not just the act is strange. The effect is different. And he says, Kamoy Kain, he says in number 4, Nechshiv shinui bein yesh ba pas koyach hama bein yesh ba koyach eish. Whether the bread was heated by the sun or by fire, there's a difference in the bread itself. And Vishuv, he says, Ein srichin l'tam to meleches machsheves. He says, if you do something in a strange way, like you write with your left hand, right? So the letter, you write something with your left hand. So what was written is perfectly written, right? If you could do a good job, right? You did it in a strange way. So then the reason you're potter is because Shabbos has to be meleches machsheves, a calculated effect. And if it isn't, you're off the hook, but the Rabbanon kick in and say it's prohibited. But here it's not because of that, he says. Here, loy chashav b'shaklal. If the result is strange, nish dasat gaser to Torah. Torah wasn't talking about that. If it's the same result, you reach it through a different path, so Chachamim can intervene. And look at the last line in number 4. V'alkein hamavashel b'cham, if you cook in the sun, given that there's a change in the result, it's mutar lechatchila. So the word's like this. This answers everything. It's very simple. On Shabbos, it's all about the result. Basa b'cholov, it's about the action. Therefore, like this. Putting food in the sun may not be such a strange action. It's a strange result. So on Shabbos, and the sun is perfectly fine. The Rambam's not sure by Basa b'cholov because it's not about that, it's about the act. I don't know. Maybe getting the heat of the sun to cook something might be, maybe Chamei Tveria. Chamei Tveria on Shabbos is fine, Minat Torah, because the stuff that will get cooked will come out quite strange. By Basa b'cholov, it's the act of cooking. If the water is hot enough to do some act of cooking, it might be the act. The Rambam's not sure, but it's a whole different discussion than Shabbos. Take salting like the Ran. The Ran wants to say Shabbos salting is considered cooking, but not by Basa b'cholov. Why? When you salt fish, you know what happens to the fish? It gets cooked. It's cooked. It was raw, now it's cooked. It's the same result, at least in the world of the Ran. He feels it's a close enough result to cooking. But it's definitely not the act. The act of cooking is fire. The act of cooking is fire. So by Basa b'cholov, where it's the act which is prohibited, if there's no fire, the Ran would say, come on, salting is nothing. But by Shabbos, salting reaches the result, so it's a problem. So too by roasting and frying, the exact same logic. By roasting and frying on Shabbos, there's no shaila that it's cooking. Why? The result. If something was roasted, it was cooked. Exactly. No, I fried the steak. I didn't cook. Come on, the flesh is.
edible
But it's
and
tak,
good.
it's a different action. I don't know. And bishul maybe means a lot of water. Frying is... So by tigun, there's a debate by Bosa B'chol. And so too by bishul achar bishul. By Shabbos, it's all about the accomplishment. If it was already cooked, you want to cook it again. You're not doing anything. Bosa B'chol is the action. So now I understand the Shvus Yankov. I don't care if you're not going to regenerate anything. You won't accomplish any effect. The food was fully cooked. The Torah answered the action. So if you take that tarovis and you heat it up with fire, you're doing an act of cooking. What? Exactly. So that's why the rules are very different between Bosa B'cholav and by Shabbos. The shaila is it the act or is it the result? And so many people talk about this, but it seems that the Chassam Sofer number 5 seems to write very clearly. So you can have some chumras by Shabbos, like by tzli and tigun, frying and roasting by Shabbos for sure, problem. Bosa B'cholav, not sure. On the other hand, in the sun or Chamei Tveria by Shabbos is for sure okay, because the result is completely off, but it could still be an action. So Bosa B'cholav could be an issue.
So how does that
What?
go back to the candles?
Oh, no. So the candles, the Chassam Sofer created his whole word by the case of the candles. The Chassam Sofer says that by the candle, that there could be an issue in the cooking. When you're going to light that candle, you have an issue in cooking, because you're cooking. It could be already cooked once before. And not just that, the butter that's getting cooked is disappearing, but it's the action of cooking. So you wouldn't, so the Chassam Sofer agrees with the El Yerabah, all those that argue on the Kohen. The Chassam Sofer is also against the, he says the issue, the Kohen said anyways you shouldn't use it because he said because it's like, since it has to be destroyed, it's like there's not enough oil. But I said that Rosh Yeshivas have a problem with that svara. But there's this other svara. The issue with using it for the Chanukah licht is forget about the benefit.
You're making it an action.
The lighting is going to be an act of cooking. Whatever gets cooked from it disappears. I don't care. It's not about the accomplishment or the result. It's about the act itself.
For Shabbos, the issue is not the cooking; it's the mouth.
Hold on. The Kohen anyway said you can't use it. The child is what reason? For what reason?
He
For what
said because
reason?
of burning.
What about steaming?
The Chassam Sofer, the
Kohen
Kohen
says
says
burning.
because since it has to be destroyed, it's like there's nothing left of it. It's like there's no oil in the cup.
Not there.
It's not there. The Chassam Sofer and the El Yerab and the Shvus Yankiv want to say because when you light it on the Chanukah, when you light it on the Chanukah, you're actually cooking.
What about steaming Bosa B'cholav?
Steaming. So the Rambam puts together with Chamei Tveria steaming, Mu'ushan.
The same.
No, it's the same thing that by Shabbos, right,
But Bosa B'cholav.
it's more chamor, because you'd say for the exact same reason. Now, why would Melicha, is funny, the Ran seems to say by Melicha on Shabbos might be a bigger issue than Ishun. Okay, you have to figure out why when you salt fish, when you steam fish or salt fish, which is a closer resemblance to...
Something's happening.
No, but as far as the result, which one looks more like a gekochte fish?
Why can't you say they both do?
All these things, all these fishes.
No, there's a difference. So no, if you really salt fish, at mamish it can get hard. But so if you steam it for long enough, obviously. Why would the Ran hold that Ishun is okay on Shabbos Minat Torah but not Melicha? Somehow Melicha more closely resembles. I don't know.
Cooking then
Maybe by Ishun he also holds you chayiv. He probably holds you chayiv by Ishun.
You would have to.
I'm assuming.
You would have to. The same reason as salted. What's the nothing?
Okay, that's the discussion. Oh, I didn't even mention the shaila is when the Malachim had Bosa B'cholav.
Yeah.
How did they violate the Bosa B'cholav? Avram didn't cook it together. Avram didn't cook it together. So the Stipler says, Chaim Kanievsky's father says, Malachim, their body is fire. So when they ate the second thing, the chemical reaction is cooked inside of it.
The question is if
they were over bishul. They were over bishul.